Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Fitness Education Series produced by the Australian Fitness Academy. It's like progressive overload for your brain. I'm your host, Tom Rock, and in today's episode we're going to talk about structuring beginner programs. And I think it's a good quick topic we can look to cover, but it's going to give you an idea of how to think about programming, which we sort of looked at in the past a little bit, but specifically looking at how we might what we need to consider when structuring a beginner's program or someone who hasn't really spent a lot of time in the gym before. And this might end up being a large proportion of your clientele potentially. And we've touched a couple of weeks ago, we looked at strength programming and things to consider with that. Beginners are generally on the other end of the spectrum where they're probably not working on maximal strength just yet. There's other things that we want to build up first before we would look to incorporate that sort of more advanced training into their program. But for a beginner, we generally want to keep it fairly simple. And while it should be simple, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily simple to put together or will be the same for each beginner that comes along. So there's still lots to consider, and you would still go through a little bit of a needs analysis about what the client's exercise history is like, what their goals are like, what their capabilities are like. You don't need to necessarily run fitness tests, but some sort of idea about how they move is going to be important. And then look to develop a program that is going to suit them as an individual. Because even though if I have 10 beginners come to me and they all want programs, there's going to be 10 different programs. They're not just because they're all never been to the gym before doesn't mean their programs are going to be exactly the same, and that'll depend on their preferences, their goals, and their current abilities. Basically, this is going to come down to. But I think what's important is having a bit of a structure you can look to work around, and in general, we want to look at movements. And I think for beginners, we generally focus on full body programs. It allows us to get the most bang for the buck out of each session. And in general, they're not going to be doing or needing a lot of training volume each session on each exercise. So we don't need to spend, if we start to split up the program, like an upper body, lower body split, they're just going to be too much volume and they're not going to be able to recover optimally given that they haven't done much training before. So they're going to pull up quite sore. So having a template is good. Some beginners may need to be a split program depending on session timeframes, goals, all sorts of things, depending on what they want to split or fit in. But in general, full body can be a really good way to go because it's going to, if they're training 2 or 3 times a week, it's going to allow them to practice these movements or practice exercises 2 to 3 times a week, which is going to help them improve. The more they practice it, the better they're going to get. And the better they get at exercising, the more effective and efficient their programs are going to be, and the quicker they'll see results. But in general, I think it's important to have a rough structure that you're going to decide on what's going to happen. So it might, like, generally we start with our larger muscle groups. So we'll probably start with our lower body movements. Then we might have some upper body movements, and then you might finish with your core, which is our general program structure. So it would be lower body compound. It could be upper body compound. You might have upper body push, upper body pull. These are our main movements, and then core. And really, we're playing around with this idea of lower body, upper body push, upper body pull, core, and just subbing in different amounts of exercises, different types of exercises based on the client. So, and depending on how much time we have in the session. So, lower body is obviously a big muscle group, and it depends where they're at. If we can start to teach them a compound movement like a squat or a deadlift, or some of the more simple variations, it could be RDL. We can look at other things like leg presses and stuff as well. So whatever's going to help you get the max out of your client, and it's going to be a range. There's definitely no wrong answer, and that's what you need to play around with and experiment. If I put a back squat in there for my beginner client, it might be good and it'll start to teach them the movement of the back squat. But in terms of maximizing results over the next 4 weeks, they're going to spend 4 weeks trying to learn how to back squat. Whereas if I put them on the leg press, which is a lot simpler, it's they're locked into a range of motion. There's no stability needed. They can probably increase the weight a little bit quicker than if they were doing, say, a back squat, where they're trying to learn the movement from scratch, and the free weight exercise is going to require a lot more balance and coordination, which they'll have to build over time. So if I want to get results quicker, the leg press is a good option. But in saying that, eventually, for potentially functionality and balance and things, I want to move them to the back squat. So it depends where they want to start, what their overall goal is. If they just want to learn to utilize free weights and they know the benefits of that, or they've seen other people do that, or depending on who else they train with, what their friends do, that may be their goal, is to learn to use free weights, learn to back squat, learn to deadlift, learn to use some dumbbells, barbells, all these sorts of things. Might be more in line with what their outcomes are. If they're just there for general fitness, to get the most out of it, just to exercise and be healthy, machines can be a good option. So you might have chest press machine, seated row, leg press, and then some sort of core. So you could utilize all machines, and that's okay. It really just depends on the client. Again, I think some free weights and single leg movements and things like that should be incorporated for functionality and balance. Again, depends on the clients. But it sort of shows that there's still so much to go into thought behind exercise programs for beginner. It's just not, oh, it's a beginner, it's the same old program again and again and again. You need to individualize a program for the client. So work out if I need single leg options, how much time do I have, can I fit in split squats, single leg RDLs, where am I going to put my isolation exercise, do I have time for bicep curls, triceps, extensions, lateral raises, those sort of things. Are they important in this program and for this client's overall goals? Have I got a 45-minute session where I need to do resistance, but I also need them to do some sort of cardiovascular training as well to improve their cardiovascular health? So there's so many variations that go into a beginner program. It can even be overwhelming a little bit the first time you do it, or the first few times you do it, because there's so many options. So having just a very broad structure like lower body, upper body push, upper body pull, core, and it could be isolation or cardio at the end potentially, and then filling that in and working out, well, what lower body exercise is going to be best. You might have two lower body exercises because it is sort of a large component. We might have an RDL and a split squat or something if we've got time. It could be a goblet squat. Pick variations of exercises that are going to be doable for the client, and we can always progress them. It's better to sort of start at the simpler version and then slowly progress than write down an exercise that's too hard and we have to regress our client, then regress and regress and regress before we find out what they're capable of. Start the easiest form of whatever exercise you want to start to incorporate, and if they show competence, you can increase them really quickly in terms of the complexity, and you can sort of get that moving. But yeah, I don't think beginner programs aren't the simplest thing in the world, so don't be afraid to think about it, put some individualization behind them, and really consider the goals of the client, what's going to suit them, and where they're at with their exercise. And it will build up quickly over time. Over the first sort of 4 to 8 to 12 weeks, you're gonna see them improve pretty rapidly. So making sure you're always pushing the weight or challenging them somewhere in their session is good to keep them interested. So you probably don't want to change exercises every single week, because we're not going to get any consistency and learning of the movement patterns. But there might be exercises here or there that you can change to keep them interested, add something in new, or just keep them aware of how much actually they're improving in terms of how much weight they're lifting or weight they're pushing, because that'll help keep them motivated too. Anyway, guys, that's just my quick little spiel on program design for beginners, but sort of program design in general. There's lots that goes into it. If you do have any questions or thoughts on programming at all, send an email to tom@afa.com.au. If you've got any questions or thoughts on programming or any topics you'd like me to cover in more specifically, send an email as well. Definitely happy to touch on any topics or subjects you guys would like to hear me talk on. But other than that, guys, I hope you have a great weekend, and I will talk to you all soon.